Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast from The Sober Club. I'm Janey Grace, and this is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. We'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there's inspiration from quit-lit authors, experts, and sober heroes. Hi, this is Janey Grace. Welcome to the podcast. And the first thing I have to tell you, in case you haven't seen any of my e-zines or whatever I've sent out this week, is that the Sobriety Rocks retreat is full. Completely sold out within, just over 24 hours or something. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful for that, because I really wasn't expecting that at all. You know, when you do these things and you make these decisions, you have absolutely no idea if they're going to fly or if anyone's going to be interested. And and also, you know, to be absolutely honest with you, I've always had a bit of a limiting belief around putting things out there. I'm always a little bit, what if nobody's interested? So it was amazing. And so thank you to those of you who've signed up. And I know there's lots of people who did miss out, and that one of the kind of emails we sent out was there were only a couple of spaces left, and we didn't realise, because obviously the booking is done at Inner Guidance. Anyways, we will book another one as soon as we can. So look out for another retreat, Sobriety Rocks retreat, which we'll book for the springtime. So we'll do that as soon as possible. We're cooking up some other plans as well. So if you want to be part of a meetup or a retreat, then watch this space. We'll make sure that you get to find out. And to those of you who are booked onto the Sobriety Rocks retreat, so excited, looking forward to seeing you in January. It's very intimate, it's very tiny, but nevertheless, it's going to be fantastic fun. It's going to be great to share this occasion with you. I had the most amazing weekend, actually, because it was beautiful weather, which I was really not expecting, being in Scotland. Everyone had said to me, oh, for goodness sake, you know, going past Inverness, make sure you've got a winter coat and an umbrella. But we had the most amazing sunshine. It was just a fantastic weekend last weekend for me. I went to a place called Findhorn, which some of you may know. It's a very magical place. It's like a kind of a community. It's difficult to describe Findhorn, but well, that's all I can say, really. It's a very magical place. I did a course there. I do lots of retreats. There was some really amazing experiences, including we had the opportunity to sit around. They have like a kind of earth hut, as they call it, and it's literally dug into the ground. So it's this kind of kooky little circular wooden hut, if you like, with a fire pit in the middle, and obviously a hole to allow that to escape, so you can kind of look up into the moonlight. A group of us, we were quite a big group, kind of 25 people, and we sat around this fire. And there's something just magical about that, isn't there? Kind of sitting in a circle and being around a fire. And then people shared stories or whatever, and then we'd written down some limiting beliefs or things that we felt were blocking us, and then we were able to put that into the fire and watch it burn. It's a really powerful experience, and I loved that last weekend. And I wrote down a couple of my limiting beliefs and put them into the fire, and it was quite amazing, really, because I got back to the room that I was staying in, and got a message to say that the Sober Club, the Sobriety Rocks retreat was sold out. So that was amazing. It just feels like exactly the right time to be doing this stuff, which is great. Talking of limiting beliefs, actually, that's very relevant for our guest today. I'm going to be interviewing Joseph James. The work that Joseph does is all around helping people get rid of their limiting beliefs. And in his case, it's about money. So he helps people rid themselves of these beliefs that so many of us carry since childhood about, money's dirty, and money doesn't grow on trees, and all of these, daft sayings and that we have around money that can carry through with us all our lives, and make it actually difficult for us to have a good relationship with money. The interview isn't about money. It just so happens that's what he does. We're going to talk to Joseph about his journey to sobriety. So I hope you find that helpful. Just before we do that, one highlight of my weekend was getting the Guardian weekend mag. I don't normally find myself saying that, but there was such a great piece on Elton John in there. Of course, his book is published now. It's called Me by Elton John, and a fantastic read. But I thought it was great because rather than just doing an extract from the book, which lots of the other mainstream newspapers have done, what The Guardian did last weekend in their mag was they got celebs, famous fans of Elton's, to ask him a question. And then he answered them, and it was made for very, very funny reading. And obviously, I won't share all of it with you. It's worth grabbing yourself a copy. It's great fun, and I've actually written a blog post about it. And the reason that it impacted me so much, it made such an impact on me, is because as I read through these answers, obviously lots of them were just, lots of fun questions and things about how he writes his music, there's questions from Bob Dylan and people asking him, which is the best song that you think you've written, and then Victoria Beckham asks him, if you're a Spice Girl, which Spice Girl would you be? And of course he says Posh. So there's lots and lots of fun questions. It's a really long article. So lots of fun, but I was really struck by how many times he mentioned his sobriety. Within all of these answers about his life, it was absolutely staggering, really, how often he mentions this in one way or another, because it's clearly so important to him. And I mean, I know I've been wanging on about Rocket Man forever and a day, and of course, the movie is still flying. Lots of people still seeing it for the first time. If you haven't seen it yet, for goodness sake, go see Rocket Man or watch it on Netflix or whatever. And listen to my podcast on Rocket Man, where I go off on a completely different tack. But obviously, Rocket Man, brought this to the theme of Rocket Man was obviously his the way he got to sobriety. But it's 29 years. 29 years. And, as I say, I fully appreciate that the movie is all about that. But this was an article where he was answering questions. So I'll give you an example. Ed Sheeran asks him, when a tour ends, I have a huge void of time to fill. What are you going to do when your big tour is over? And of course, he is on a really, really long tour. And Elton answers a little bit. He talks about how he's going to catch up with friends, how he's going to spend time with his sons. So he does all that kind of normal stuff. And then he says, and I'll just read you this bit, he says, when I got sick a couple of years back, I was forced to spend 7 weeks at home in Windsor recuperating. It was the longest time I'd spent there in years. I remember when I came out of rehab, there's this thing they talk about called the hole in the donut. How are you going to fill the time when you used to spend drinking and taking drugs? I had all these extravagant ideas about learning to speak Italian and cook. Of course, I didn't do them, so I'm not planning anything like that. So there's kind of the first mention, one of the first. And then who is it? Who I've lost track of who asked him the questions. But anyway, I think it was Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton. He says, your path to success hasn't always been easy. You weren't born into privilege. You've had to battle other people's preconceptions in many aspects of your life. How have you overcome these challenges? What drives you when things seem difficult? And Elton says, not surprisingly, the challenges I had were shyness and my sexuality. And then he talks a little bit about that. But then he says, I found challenges hard to overcome until I got sober because I just didn't know how to deal with them. So there's another mention there. And then later, it really becomes, really apparent that he says that Donatella Versace says, you saved my life. How many other lives have you saved? And he says, I've absolutely no idea. Donatella is, of course, talking about addiction. I'm responsible for helping a lot of people get sober and hopefully stay sober. That's your responsibility and it's part of the process. You give them your number, you phone them, you check up on them, you make sure that you see that they're okay. And that's what I did with Eminem. And then he says, I remember very well the night Donatella decided to go for help. It was an intervention. It's not always the best way of doing things because if people aren't ready, it can be a disaster. But I knew she was ready. She came to see me play a show 3 weeks beforehand. She was in a terrible state and I knew she was giving me a message, which was I need help and I need it now. And she didn't need much persuading to go. And then there's a couple of other mentions, which I won't share with you. You can pick up the article. But I was just so struck by this because it really made me realise two things. One, it's such a thing. This is such a thing. If you are in the early stages of ditching the booze, or if you've been sober months, years, I don't think it ever goes away. Of course, it becomes embodied as who you are, just like if you choose to be vegetarian or whatever choices you make, it becomes who you are. It's embodied. You're not having to consciously panic about it all the time, which of course is a fantastic thing. But it does become who you are, and that is such an important part that it almost... It can't be not mentioned, if you see what I mean. I was so struck by that. I mean, 28 years, and I know Rocket Man's out and everything, but wow, for that to be such an important part of so many of the questions he answered, I thought was amazing. And the second thing that struck me from this piece was I had not realised what an incredible role model he's been, what an incredible sober hero he's been, and helped so many people. It's absolutely incredible, actually. I knew that he'd helped Eminem. I absolutely knew about that. Eminem has been crediting him for many years for his, I think it's 10 years, isn't it, with Eminem? But I had no idea that it's clearly been his thing, across the years. It's been his thing to help other people and to do it with such joy. And I love the way, that's actually the third thing that it made me think, was Elton is on exactly the same path that I'm trying to roll with, that is, let's share the joy of this. It's absolutely not just, oh, this is a terrible thing and you're one of those terrible people who are afflicted, poor you, the only way to deal with it is to not to drink, how awful for you, you can never have a drink again. I hate that angle. He's not doing that at all. He's talking only of the positives, before, that he's now able to deal with challenges, that he's now able to be the person he wants to be, and that's just it's absolutely magical. It's brilliant. I loved that piece. I thought it was great. I was so hoping we were going to be interviewing him again, but I have interviewed him before. I've met him before a couple of times, but I was hoping we were going to interview him for the book. But sadly, it was just done over the phone, so he didn't get to come in, which was a real shame for me. Anyways, so grab yourself a copy of his book. It's a fantastic read. I just need to remind you again that the event is on Monday, 28th of October. If you haven't booked your tickets yet, it's at Hello Love Home, which is a little studio vegan cafe in Bloomsbury. All of the profits go to the Hello Beautiful Foundation. It's an amazing charity that work with people with cancer, offering raising awareness and offering lots of alternative, non-toxic approaches and integrative care. Amazing charity. And tickets are £15. As I say, all the profits go to them. And also that includes alcohol-free drink from Sensor Drinks, and these are amazing. Sensor Spirits are just really magical drinks. You have to really check them out. So anyone who can come along to that, would be so fantastic to see you, to meet you on that occasion. I know it's half term in some areas, which is real pain. I don't know how we managed to get that wrong, but never mind. I'm hoping some of you can come. It's not too late to book your tickets. Really importantly, my special guest is Clare Pooley, who had her own journey with breast cancer, of course. So she has some great stuff to share, I think, as well. She has some amazing tips. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at, by the way. The title of the event is Are You Sober Curious? But it could also be titled Have You Been Sober for Many Years? It doesn't really matter. It's, we will have chat and share some inspiration and share some tips, and it would be great to meet some like-minded or vaguely interested people. It'd be very non-judgmental. You can bring whoever you want. So we really look forward to seeing you there. If you're interested in going to that, you can go to the hellolove.home website, or you can, hellolove.org website, or you can go to the soberclub.com, click on events, and then from there, that will link you through to get your tickets. So really look forward to seeing you, some of you at that event. And right now, let's talk to Joseph. My guest is Joseph James, and Joseph sounds like a really interesting guy. I'm so looking forward to chatting to you, Joseph. You're a money mindset guy, and you're an author. So tell us a bit about the work you do, and then we'll just introduce that bit first, and then we'll get into your kind of sobriety journey.
Wow, thank you very much. It's really nice to chat with you and be on your show. So I do money mindset coaching. So I help mainly self-employed people, although I have a few corporate clients, and we really work on kind of releasing limiting beliefs about money, a lot of self-worth stuff, about getting comfortable charging well for your time and energy. And I really help people to kind of step into a more empowered space where they create offers in their business that feel really great for them, and just get them feeling really comfortable, really honoring their own boundaries when it comes to things like charging well, releasing the need to over deliver. I think we can all identify with that one at some point. And just really helping people to get comfortable with, setting goals that feel authentic for them, and then creating a very practical plan to achieve those.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that whether you have a business or not, these limiting beliefs around money affect us all, don't they? And it is amazing when you first sort of realize that we all have a relationship with money, and often it's these words, isn't it, that these phrases and words that we've all been using for years, and it's only when you stop and notice them, the money doesn't grow on trees and all of that stuff. You must come across this with your clients all the time.
I do. And what's so interesting is most of it's from childhood.
Yeah.
But often one of the things I say to people is we don't really need to delve into where it came from. Let's just proactively decide to move forward and cultivate new beliefs. I don't think we can really ever know 100% where something comes from. But there seems to be a really big one for coaches, consultants, authors, anybody who has kind of what I'd call like a healing practice.
Yes.
There's this really, I call it limiting because it is, limiting belief that it's wrong to charge for those kind of services, and that if you charge well for them, you're money grabbing, or you're a fraud, or you're, just out to get people's money. And one of the things I coached on last week in a workshop I did was this whole concept that I teach, where when you view your clients as abundant and you really help them to invest in themselves, they take the work more seriously, and they're more likely to actually do the work. And you also both go into that, I don't want to say agreement because that sounds quite corporate, doesn't it? But you go into that working relationship both feeling fully invested. So you actually empower yourself and them at the same time by being comfortable charging well for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally. And of course, this relates really to the, many people listening to this podcast, because, money is a very interesting one when it comes to deciding to ditch the booze, because it's funny how when it comes to drinking, we all seem to have a bottomless pit. Even however poor you are, you can always seem to afford, yet another bottle of wine. And it's what's really interesting about drinking, we'll come to your story in a minute, is most of us don't count. We actually really don't count the cost. We just sort of shell out for another round or whatever. And yet when we stop drinking, we kind of look at a bottle of something soft and go, oh, a couple of quid, I'm not sure. I mean, what's that about?
It's so interesting because I was in a cab the other day going into a meeting, and I always think the universe has a really funny way of lining up synchronicities. And I can't remember the conversation specifically, but the driver said something to me, and I said, oh, I'm sober. And he said, oh my gosh, that's amazing timing. I decided to get today to get sober myself. What can you offer me any tips? And one of the things I said to him was, well, what are your motivating factors for wanting to get sober? And we talked a bit about that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how funny, I've got, I'm coaching the
cab driver.
Yeah. And I said to him about money, and I said, what you can actually do is calculate what you'd spend a day.
Yeah.
And instead of just not spending it, set up a direct debit. So let's say you were spending 20 quid a night on wine. Set up a direct debit. So that 20 quid goes into a separate account. And at the end of the month, look at how much you've saved from not drinking.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I always tell people to put it in a jar, actually, because I'm very old style and I like actual cash. And it's fabulous to see it mount up, isn't it? Amazing. So let's talk about your story then. So obviously you're doing the coaching work, but you used to work in PR. So that's an industry where probably most of us know, boozing is rife, as it is just about anything linked to the media, isn't it?
It is. And I think, what I found very, very early on was I was, living in Soho, I was working in PR and events and doing club promoting. So those three industries and locations are all very rife with booze. And what I found was it was normalized. and I don't want to sound judgmental here in the slightest, because I believe everybody has the right to have their own life path. But what I found was it was almost celebrated to party hard. And
Yes.
it became, and again, not to go into any form of shaming here, but I remember several agencies, people would almost wear a hangover with a badge of pride. And they'd kind of go, oh, oh, mate, I really smashed it last night. Or, this
Yeah,
event,
it seemed to be cool, isn't it?
It seemed to be cool. It really was at the time as well. It really was spot on. Yeah, what you said. It was really seemed to be cool. And then the club promoting thing, and then PR. Booze just became this way of celebrating, way of feeling better.
Yeah.
And also, I remember specifically PR meetings back in those days. You were taught, go out and get journalists drunk, or go and buy them a bottle of champagne. Or I remember being in a club night I was hosting, and the club owner just was sending over bottles of this and that to try and keep the party going. And I remember at the time thinking, it's so interesting how this is so celebrated in this one room, but tomorrow we're all going to feel absolutely horrific.
Yeah, totally. And then what was the point at which it started to change for you then? And how long before you actually did something about it? Because most of us have a period where we know, don't we, for a long time that something has to give, but then you don't necessarily deal with it straight away.
Well, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you about this on your show, is because I think, to anybody listening who might be thinking, I think there's something going on there that I'd like to work on, you're not alone. Everybody, has these feelings. And for me personally, I'll be honest, it was a few years. I remember, I can remember one particular, I think I'd done an event or something, or a club night. And I remember just feeling really awful the next day, hangover. And I was almost trying to sort of like live up to this idea that it was cool, but something didn't feel right for me anymore. And I thought to myself, all those people I've partied with, I can't call them today. They're not really my friends. My actual friends are in a completely different sector, industry rather. And it just started to gradually, over a period of time, feel like it wasn't really, I intuitively, I'm a very intuitive person, and something in my gut was just saying to me, this isn't healthy for you, this isn't right. Yeah. But rather than listen to it, I would try and drown it out with going for Bloody Marys, or, the standard drink through it, which my friends and I used to joke about. Yeah. And I noticed as well, if not to get too deep, but one of the things I noticed was the language we were all using, we were encouraging each other's patterns. Oh, what a ledge. Oh, brilliant. Oh, yeah, I feel awful too. And you actually look at it and think, you're celebrating feeling awful. So that was really, it started around there. And then I had kind of periods over the next few years where I would give up, and I would say I was doing a detox, or I would say I was doing a cleanse, or I would say I was doing a gym routine. I never called it going sober. I was too frightened to. Yeah. Because to me, I'd have to imply something else. And I remember doing these periods of like 6 to 8 weeks and just feeling amazing, feeling so much healthier. But I kept feeling like I was missing out on something. And then, you and I spoke a little bit earlier about this. And then a number of events in my life, probably about 2 or 3 years ago now, started to happen in my personal life. And I started to kind of ignore red flags with somebody. And, we all know your intuition never lies, right? Like your gut feeling. But rather than do something about it, what I did was self-medicate. So
numb out. Yeah.
Yeah, numb out. And that's funny you said that, because that's exactly the term I used to use. I just want to numb out. So I'd go and pick up a drink or go for a few or whatever. And over the course of that period of time, I just kept burying all my intuitive warnings and feelings with self-medicating, like I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to. And there was also a lot of guilt and shame attached to that, because I felt like I know what my intuition's telling me. I'm tolerating extremely bad behavior, but rather than wanting to face it head on, I'm self-medicating and numbing out, like you said. And it was really when it got, quite bad with this particular dynamic that I remember just my intuition was just screaming at me and just saying, look what's happened, look what's happening in your, in your personal life, look how you're feeling, you're disrespecting your own life, actually.
I mean, most of us do. We self-sabotage, don't we? Even those of us who are really quite... I mean, I've said this on the podcast a lot, but I look back and I think, oh my goodness, I'm a relatively bright person. I spend my life talking about holistic health and spirituality, and here I am totally self-sabotaging, or I was. It's funny that we do it for so long.
There's a phrase in A Course in Miracles, which I love, and it says, we teach what we most need to learn at the time.
Of course.
And that very often... I would be talking about self-sabotage with people, and in the back of my mind I'd be thinking, this is for you. And to an extent it's something that we all do in varying degrees, and it's something that's always good to be mindful of. But one of the things I got really clear on, actually, was when I wrote down a number of things on paper, like, what is this actually costing me financially, emotionally, health-wise, career-wise, and I really just decided, I want to go back to that feeling of waking up and feeling fresh.
Yeah.
And I think something else I'd like to share, if you don't mind, is what I started to notice as well was things like holidays or really special occasions seemed to be based around booze. Mm. And I would kind of think to myself, well, I'm going to be hungover tomorrow. That's fine, because it's a special occasion, or it's a birthday, or it's a holiday, or, whatever. And I can remember intermittently talking to people who were like, oh, I don't drink. And I used to think, oh, how boring. But really, being sober now, I've just celebrated 1 year of sobriety. I can say, like, for me, this is when your life begins. You wake up fresh, your goals manifest quicker, your spirituality deepens, your self-respect skyrockets, your boundaries get so much clearer, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. So when you finally kind of made this decision then, and you knew it was time, what route did you take? Because one of the things that stopped me in the beginning from really going for it, even though I also had the voice, the intuition for years, telling me, it's really time to stop. I actually didn't know what to do. I had no idea. I knew that I didn't fit the kind of traditional rock bottom AA kind of route. And I had no idea what else was out there. Now, of course, things have moved on even in the couple of years. And now, thankfully, it's amazing, the stuff on offer. But for you, just over a year ago, what did you, first find out about that? What support did you find, if any?
Yeah, so no disrespect at all to anyone who's in the program, because I know it saves lives and it's amazing, but very similar to you, it doesn't personally resonate with me.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did was, I've always been a very spiritual person. I started a Buddhist practice about 9-10 years ago of chanting, and I completely had stopped. And one of the things I thought to myself was, I really want to start chanting again, and having this practice twice a day of saying the prayers and doing the chanting. And I remember getting the altar out and setting it all up again, and and sitting there and just feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to rebuild now. Yeah. And just starting that really helped. Nichiren in Buddhism, that really helped. I've always had a very spiritualist practice as well, and sort of a number of other things really helped me. So I would say turning to spirituality really helped.
Yeah, because I guess it's bringing you back to who you are. I think this is quite a lot of it, isn't it? Because when you're drinking all the time, you actually you're not in touch with who you really are, your authentic self, Yeah,
and I think you're also trying, I think to me it's two things. One is you're trying to numb out, as you perfectly said. And two, you're trying to show up as somebody else, aren't you? You're trying to, let's say you don't feel confident, well, you're trying to feel more confident so you enjoy the party. My sort of view on that now is, why would you be at a party that you needed to not be authentic at? So that was definitely true for me. The spiritual route really happened, and I also found it really helpful to what I didn't want to do was go down the route of woe is me and make recovery this kind of sad, victim-y energy, which I know it can feel like. So what I did was I wrote out what I wanted my goals for the next 3 months to be, what I wanted to do with my career, what I wanted to do with my, everything from like exercising to nutrition, the amount of money I wanted to save, projects I wanted to do. And I thought to myself, instead of focusing on what I'm not doing, i.e. drinking, I would replace it with something proactive. So, for example, going back to the cabbie story, he said to me, I'm just worried what I'll do on an evening to relax. And I said, well, why don't you instead look at what you can be doing?
Exactly.
It's about changing the narrative in your mind as well. Because I think if you go into it with a feeling of lack, of I'm giving this up, your brain instantly goes into this sort of feeling of, I guess, craving.
Yeah. I never use the phrase give up, actually. I only ever say ditching the booze, because I think you're right. If you say giving up, the feeling is always something, I'm losing something. It's like when people say they're losing weight. Well, you don't want it back, do you? So you're ditching it. Yeah.
That's perfect.
So true. Yeah, fascinating. So for you then, the spirituality, coming back to the spiritual practice has really helped. Did you connect with communities, or with and did you find your tribe, or did that take a little longer?
I think I never necessarily found like a sober group. What I started to do was go to SGI Buddhist meetings, which is people who practice Nichiren Buddhism. And also what I found really helpful was reconnecting with friends who I felt I could really be my authentic self with. Reconnecting with people from my past who I got on really well with, and like you said, just people I felt were in my tribe in that way.
But what about the other people then? How did that work out for you? Because of course, one of the things that people are often most afraid of, particularly if you're young and in the workplace, or in the still, in the dating kind of scene, people can feel really afraid of other people's reactions, and people who've known you as their drinking buddy. That can seem just exhausting. I mean, actually, the reality is most people don't care that much after the initial surprise. They don't really care as long as they got their own drink. But how did you navigate those relationships at the beginning?
I think there were two things that I found really helpful. One was using language that felt authentic and comfortable for me. So I would say to anyone listening, if you're thinking about telling people in your life, or whether it's work or personal, use language that feels really authentic for you and that you feel very comfortable with. You don't have to use any phrases that you don't like or that don't feel like they resonate with you. And also for me, it was about putting my own sobriety and well-being and health first. So not to sound dismissive in any way, but my opinion was kind of, well, if you don't like it, then you don't really belong in my life, do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I never had, I think I probably had, of everybody I spoke to, I probably had one slightly inappropriate comment, but I wasn't close with them anyway. So my opinion on that was, I think when you ditch the booze, as you said, I think you also ditch a lot of, I need to be careful here. I don't want to sound like I'm being too negative, but I think when you do decide to get sober, what you often get is a clarity about boundaries that you need to assert more.
Yeah,
I think
so true.
And I think you also decide on what behaviour isn't acceptable in your own life, and also what relationships no longer necessarily serve you. And this is something that I found, with my own sobriety, was a lot of the time, people that you're just drinking a lot with, you're not really actually that close, are you? You don't really have that much in common.
Not. No, I've said before, I actually look back and I realise how much time I wasted just being with people that aren't really my people, but I wasted time just because we were drinking. It seems shocking to me now, and now I don't waste that time. If I'm not enjoying myself, I go. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you also find, to me, there's a really beautiful new level of authenticity when you connect with people and you're sober and you're clear-headed and you're connecting with them as yourself. I think there's a new depth you get in your friendships, and there's a new depth you get in your relationships that feels so much more real than, going out and getting, going out and drinking with people, and then kind of all playing woe is me the next morning about how hungover you are, how hungover you are. So I think, I guess to kind of round up that question, I would say, like, I navigated it by, like I said, using language that felt comfortable. So I deliberately didn't say things like recovery or anything, because I didn't feel it was that. I felt like it was a proactive choice to I guess, proactively manage my sobriety rather than giving up or going into, recovery. And also, I kind of listened to my intuition a lot more, and I wanted to see what people's reactions would be. I almost wanted people to show, if that makes sense. Like, I almost wanted to leave people completely with themselves to see how they'd react, because actually, what's surprising is, nearly everybody I thought would be completely amazing and supportive was, and very few people actually, didn't give me the reaction I necessarily thought that I would get. But I was also very mindful of why I was doing it for myself.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be your focus.
Yeah, definitely. And how difficult was it for you in the early weeks? I mean, I on this podcast, we focus absolutely on the positivity, but we also try and tell people the truth, which is that, it can feel tough in the first few weeks, particularly if you've been drinking for a lot of years, and not all of the benefits come immediately. So what were the kind of hard bits for you, if there were any?
Yeah, there were. And it's funny, it definitely is the first few weeks. I think the biggest things for me were, just to be really brutally honest with you, it was the not numbing feelings.
Yeah,
it was not numbing
You've
feelings.
got to face up to stuff.
You've got to face up to stuff, and I was working through a lot of stuff in my personal life. I was coming to terms with things. I was processing things, and what I found, where I might have reached for a drink before to kind of numb me out or calm me down, or, as I used to say, just chill a little bit. What I found was I felt like everything was ultra sensitive. So I felt like somebody had turned the dial up on all my emotions.
I know exactly what you mean. I felt raw. I felt really quite raw.
Yeah.
I remember feeling very ungrounded. I was really chaotic. I mean, now looking back with the work that I've done since, I now realize that probably my brain chemistry was all over the place. And I now advise other people to really have a look at, whether you need to sort out something to help with your serotonin levels and your dopamine and GABA and all this stuff. And I think I must have been massively out of whack, because I was just chaotic and felt really raw, and sometimes really quite angry and quite emotional. And it can be quite a wobbly time, can't it?
It can be, and one of the things I also found very, when people give up smoking, they say that they find that they miss doing something with their hands. I found the same thing. So I would be kind of sitting on the sofa, finishing a day of doing coaching calls or teaching a class, and I would miss kind of holding something in my hand. So what I started to do was, rather than push against it and like make myself feel worse, I just used to go, okay, I'll hold a cup of water in the same way, or a glass of juice in the same way. And maybe that sounds like a bit of a silly example.
No,
but
not at all. I mean, I love wine glasses. I always have, non-alcoholic drinks in nice chilled wine glasses, because I like the glass.
I do the same. And I find psychologically it really helps. And also it kind of, it stops with what I call annoying questions. So if everyone else has got a big champagne glass and you've got a tumbler of water,
exactly,
you don't tend to get the questions. So that was definitely the early weeks. And I think also, like you said, just that feeling of rawness, of like having to process things without numbing it, especially things you've been maybe numbing down or wanting to ignore. And I would just say to anyone listening, like, really be gentle with yourself, really focus on self-care, really give yourself permission to take it very slowly, be very kind to yourself. It can feel overwhelming at the time, if you've been self-medicating and numbing things out, lots of things can come to the surface at once. You don't have to deal with everything at once. You certainly do not have to deal with everything, in one go. And just be your own best friend. I kept saying that to myself, like, be your own best friend here, because you don't have to sit there punishing yourself mentally or being unkind to yourself or beating yourself up.
Sure. So I'm guessing that for you, the meditation kind of practices that you already were using, as it were really beneficial. What would you recommend for someone who is is very new to that, you know, is there any a kind of a simple exercise that you might be able to recommend that would work for anyone, even if they're right at the beginning of that kind of journey, if you like? Because of course for so many of us, we're nervous of that as well, because we think, oh, I can't switch my mind off, so you know it's going to be something else that I'm bad at.
Yeah. So the organisation I belong to is called SGI UK. It's a lay Buddhist organisation. So if chanting in particular is of interest, and Nichiren in Buddhism is, you can just go to, I think it's sgi.org.uk, and they have lots of meetings around London. And you can chant as much as you like. You don't have to do anything. One of my friends ages ago actually said exactly what you said. And they said, what if I do it wrong? I said, well, just, take it slow and do as much as you feel comfortable with. And I would also encourage anyone to really give yourself permission to make it work for you. Whatever is calling you as being helpful, whether it's yoga or it's a meditation practice or it's, any form of spirituality that kind of jumps out at you, just study it like you would anything else. Practice it as much as you can and be gentle with yourself. I think too often when we get sober, we kind of want all the benefits now.
Yeah, definitely. I was fully expecting it all to be within the first couple of weeks. I was gutted when I hadn't, lost weight and got, loads of energy. I was gutted.
I was like,
takes a little longer though, right?
Yeah, I literally was like, I am on day 7. Why it's not all, slotting into place? It's kind of like, well.
So you're a year now, right? So you've had all the various firsts, the first holiday and the first party and the first birthday.
I was a year sober a week ago on Sunday.
Okay, great. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was really funny, actually. I had a sobriety clock on my phone, and I had this really funny thing where I thought, my 1 year sober birthday, I call it, because I feel like it's you're living for the first time, really. And I was also doing a workshop and a talk that day, so it was a really beautiful but very emotional day, because I kind of woke up that morning, did some chanting, went through my workshop, and then I'd forgotten originally that it was the 1 year day, and my phone went off going, congratulations on your 1 year of sobriety. And then literally it was like, here's a mic, you're on camera, go and talk for an hour. My mind kept kind of going, this is obviously amazing, but I need to think about that later, because obviously I wasn't going to share that with the workshop.
Work to do.
Not in a kind of negative way, but I just thought it wasn't appropriate to what I was coaching on. So it was beautiful. It was really full on. But I definitely do think that, I'm not sure about you, but I kind of thought like I would have some huge epiphany on the 1 year day. And it just felt like in the other day in a way. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting actually, because I remember thinking, is there a danger that, I might get to a year and then sort of start thinking, oh, I've done all the firsts now and I've kind of had the best of it, maybe I should think about going back to drinking. And I used to get those thoughts in my mind. And I'm actually really pleased that I caught sight of enough of the kind of quit lit books and podcasts and stuff and heard enough people saying, actually, and this is the naffest phrase in the whole goddamn world, but that gift that keeps on giving phrase. I can't think of a not naff way of saying it, but it so is true. It's just, honestly, I'm nearly 2 years and it's just gets better all the time. And I could never have imagined that. And that's what you have to keep sight of, and I just think that's the amazing thing, really.
It is, and what I found, and I was actually saying this yesterday, is everything. I feel like I'm living for the first time.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm. The other morning I woke up at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday, feeling really fresh, and I went for a lovely run, and I had a lovely breakfast, and I was really mindful of all the things I was grateful for.
Yeah.
And I was really conscious of all of these beautiful things in my career, in my personal life, with my family, with loads of things. Like you said, I did all the firsts. And I had a similar thought, as you've shared. And I did think to myself, I've done a year now. Like, I wonder what would happen if I just... And then I stopped myself and I just said, no.
Yeah. Why would you give up on that?
And also, I guess for me, it was also about looking at the results that it brought into my life when I was doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Remembering just how miserable it was.
Well, I remember I read a book, and I think it's called Living Sober. I can't remember the author, but it's AA literature. But one of the things I love in the book is he talks about, without going into guilt, remember a particularly bad patch or a bad time, and don't let your guard down, because, and I don't want to sound like I'm being negative or scary here, but what I try and think is it's very easy to get complacent and to let your guard down a little bit and go, oh, one will be fine, two will be fine, whatever. When you get sober and you start to feel the incredible benefits and see the incredible benefits, and you just have this beautiful new sense of awareness about life, don't you? And this feeling of waking up fresh and awake and alert, I just think I wouldn't give that up for anything that's too precious.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing to talk to you. I love your story. It's just great. It's so positive. It's amazing. And what would be your kind of like one tip then for people? I know you've probably got lots, but for anyone kind of, well, at any stage actually, is there kind of one tip that you'd like to share, apart from the money, which we like that a lot. We like the money saving, and the noticing of the money. That's a great one. Anything else that you would recommend?
For maintaining, like for getting sober, you mean?
Well, yeah, or for, I mean, obviously people listening are at lots of different stages, so you choose what tip for what stage you'd like to share.
I'm just going to kind of, off the top of my head, I think what I feel quite cool to say here is, culturally, we're programmed to associate booze with fun, booze with living it up, booze with celebrating, booze with living it large, all those, naff sayings. And I'd really encourage you just to check in with yourself and just take a deep breath and do whatever you need to do. And really look at yourself and just realize that you get to define those terms in a way that works for you. So fun does not have to cost you the next day. Fun does not have to make you feel terrible afterwards. And whether you're thinking about getting sober, I would say if you're thinking about it, just give yourself permission to do it in a way that works for you. Be gentle with yourself. Get support that's helpful and meaningful for you. Know that you can do it. You really can. And I would say if you are like us, sober, and you're looking to maintain, always focus on what you're grateful for about your sobriety. Always focus on, I do, part of my morning practice is gratitude. And one of the things I always say is thank you. And I always say I'm very grateful for being sober today. So really, instead of going into I wish I was at that party or whatever, I would say always list the benefit. I'm going to be clear-headed tomorrow. I'm so grateful I'm sober. I feel really aware of things. I hope that wasn't too many tips.
No, lovely. It's fantastic. Yeah, I'm a very big fan of gratitude journals and all of that. Gratitude really is the key, isn't it? To definitely. Yeah, fantastic.
I think just one more cheeky one, if I can. I think a lot of people talk about, taking the edge off, and do you miss numbing out, as we called it. I would just say, to me, I mean, as a coach, this is a very coachy thing to ask, but I would say to anybody, it's more about creating a life you don't need to numb out from.
And you're better equipped. Again, we've often said on this podcast, getting sober doesn't mean that your life's going to from here on in be perfect. Shit may still happen, but you definitely feel much stronger, and as you said, with what you have more clarity to be able to deal with what's going on. And I really, really have noticed that, from the little things to the big things. Somebody in the sober club was saying that they'd finally booked a dental appointment and sorted out car insurance. And it's those little things that when you're drinking are exhausting on every level. And when you get sober, you find you've got the energy to just deal with the little things. And then when the big things come in, okay, they may not be great, but you start from a better position.
You definitely do. And I think you also start from a much less dramatized position.
Yes.
When I was drinking, everything was a huge
Everything was a drama. That's so true.
It really was. And, either when you're hungover, everything's 10 times worse, or when you're drinking. And I think you also, when you're sober, you also get a lot clearer on what does and doesn't work for you in your life. So you're better equipped to not tolerate bad behavior. You're much more equipped to deal with things like, I remember having my first, I wouldn't call it disagreement at work, but it was a kind of a situation. And they said, oh, you know, come to the pub with us, and blah, blah. And I thought, you know, actually I'm sober. And what was really funny is it was the first time I'd really articulated it in that environment. And they made some kind of comment that I thought to myself normally would have really made me irritated, maybe say something sarcastic back. And I just said, let's leave the conversation here. That doesn't work for me, but thank you.
Yeah.
And I really,
do you know what? It makes you more grown up.
It does,
doesn't it? It makes you more grown up.
And also, I just feel like you start living, you know, so many people were like, are you not going to miss this? Are you going to miss that? Going on holiday? I said, no, because you wake up fresh and you get to enjoy the day. You
have lots more hours on holiday, don't you?
You have a lot more hours for your money. And you also, I think, what I noticed as well is my goals in my career, in my personal life, just instantly started to manifest so much quicker.
Yeah.
Because, you know, your vibration is a lot clearer, isn't it, when you're sober?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, you know, we'll do a whole podcast on that at some point. This whole thing of how your vibration changes, because, you know, you don't have to be particularly spiritual to still notice that. It's really something, isn't it? Anyways, I could talk to you for hours, but thank you. Do you want to give us your website, Joseph, in case anyone is interested in the coaching stuff that you do?
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's josephjamesmentoring.com.
Great.
The podcast is called Money, Mindset and Strategy, and you can find my books on Amazon under Joseph James.
Brilliant. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Thanks ever so much. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you, Joseph. Lovely to hear your story. Don't forget, if you have any suggestions of anyone you'd like me to interview, drop me a line, and you might want to be featured yourself. I would love to share more stories from listeners. Also in the Sober Club, where we're starting a featured members section, because I think it's great to be inspired by other people, and there are so many different ways of doing this thing that it's nice to be inspired. One thing that we do a lot is share self-care tips, and you know, it can be something really very small. There's been a couple of threads in the Sober Club in our Facebook group about sleep, and sometimes how hard it can be to sleep. And I remember in the early weeks when I first ditched the booze, I remember it was unbelievably difficult to sleep. I thought it was going to, you know, kind of come super easily to me, but it doesn't. It can take a while. I remember having kind of muscle cramps and feeling really, I don't know, just digestive issues, and just feeling really quite out of sorts for a bunch of weeks. And so we were making some suggestions on the Facebook group for the Sober Club members about some of the things you can do. Some of the obvious things like, well, they call it sleep hygiene, don't they? We've spoken about this before, you know, making sure your room's the right temperature, preferably not having electronic stuff going on, you know. Please don't watch the news before you go to bed, and don't be checking your phone either. I think the importance of a little bit of a routine, I think it's really important. If you can write a gratitude list at the end of the day, that's one of the best things you can do. Just helps focus your mind and helps you think of good things and think of what you're grateful for. And even if you've had the, you know, crappiest day ever, there's always something to be grateful for. So kind of getting that out of your head first is really good. And then things like herbal teas can be really good. We all know about chamomile and those kind of teas, but also there's a great one from Chuckling Goat called Sing Me to Sleep. It's a really nice title. And that's like, you know, we're talking proper tea, roots and flowers and herbs. So you can brew some of that. That's fantastic for helping you get to sleep. A little drop of lavender oil on the pillow. We were talking last week about essential oils. Lavender oil is great for helping with sleep. So tiny things like that. But then the next bit of the piece is whether to look at what's going on with your kind of brain chemistry, because often when you ditch the booze, this is the bit that people forget. I definitely did not do this, and I think it made it harder for me than I needed to. And I think if I had have found a way to determine whether I was lacking in dopamine and serotonin and GABA, you know, all of these brain chemicals just help to keep us balanced, and disrupted sleep can often mean there is a deficiency in those areas. And this is not necessarily anything that you're going to need, you know, medication or even supplementation for. It's stuff that really good food. You can put this back with good whole food, as well as, of course, the obvious lifestyle stuff, the getting out in the fresh air and nature and, those kind of practices, the exercise. Over the weekend, when I was, last weekend, when I was at Findhorn, I really, really felt the power of nature. It was so bizarre because I arrived at Findhorn and decided to go off for a walk, and I knew that we were by the bay, so I just headed off by the bay, and it's absolutely beautiful sunny day, as I've already said, and there's the bay in front of me and some little boats, jogging along in the water there, and it was really lovely. And then you could kind of see further on some sand dunes. Anyone who knows this area will know exactly what I mean. And it's quite a long walk down to the end of the kind of sand dunes, and then that's kind of the end. And I was pottering around by the bay looking at the boats, and then I suddenly thought, I wonder what's kind of around the corner or over the other side of those kind of trees and bushes. And one little bit of me thought, I wonder whether, maybe there's actually the beach and the sea around there, but it can't be because it would be signposted or something. So I almost turned back, and thank goodness I didn't actually walk right to the end and turn round, and there's the ocean. Wow, it was absolutely amazing. You've all heard me go on about the sea, how much I love the sea, and it was just so magical, absolutely amazing. So you've got this really tranquil bay on one side, and then you kind of go over the dunes or around the corner, and there's this massive, unbelievable stretch of beach and crashing waves. So that was fantastic. And in addition to that, at Findhorn there are some really incredible biodynamic gardens. It's a centre of sustainability, and so being in those gardens with those ancient trees and plants was also really, really, really healing. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but anyway, get out in nature. That's what I'm trying to say. I was chatting to someone in the week who was saying they live right in the city, and it's not as easy to do that, and I get that completely. But there's always a park or somewhere you can get to, and I think it's really worth making the effort, even if you just get somewhere for 5-10 minutes, just to get a bit closer to nature. I think it's easy for us to forget. We get so busy, and we're just so constantly. It's all the minutiae of life, and we forget that actually we need to breathe. There's that great book, isn't there? Nature's Deficit Disorder, I think it is. So that's the self-care tip. That's an easy one this week. So we look forward to seeing some of you on Monday the 28th at Hello Love. Don't forget there's blog posts at thesoberclub.com. We are going to be opening up again soon. I've had so many requests, but a lot of people just didn't see it when I opened it up the first time around. I did say that we were going to get it all completely right before we open again. Now I'm not actually sure. I don't know. I might just open it up again for a bit because I can, because it's my train set, and because I've got quite a lot of people asking. It just seems crazy. If we can have more people who really want some of these resources, then maybe we'll open it up. So watch this space, but make sure you're on the waiting list for that. So all you have to do is just go to thesoberclub.com and give us your email address. There's a free PDF, Self-Care and Sobriety. So if you've signed up for that, then we'll have your email address, and then you'll be first to hear, and obviously first to hear about the retreats and the events as well, which as we now know can sell out quickly. So make sure you're on that list. I think there may still be some competitions up there to win alcohol-free drinks. We do have exclusive competitions as well for people who are in the Sober Club. And as I say, there's a blog post there as well about Rocket Man, and another one about this piece, because I keep thinking about that recently. So look forward to seeing some of you on the 28th. There's an event this weekend, Sober and Social Organising. Might see some of you at that as well. And until next time, as Elton John would say, this is the thing. He's been at it 28 years, and it's still an amazing thing. So pat yourself on the back, give yourself a really big hug. And if you've been sober a good few years, then have a think. Who else? Who can you shine your light on in lieu of Elton? Because I'm guessing most people can't have Elton as their mentor. But we can all encourage and inspire somebody else. So I'll see you same time next week. Don't forget, coming up, I have an interview with Annie Grace. How exciting is that going to be? See you soon. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast. I'm Janey Lee Grace. Please go to thesoberclub.com, listen to more podcasts, read our blogs, enter our competitions, grab yourself a free PDF, Self-Care in Sobriety, and check out our online community,